A decision born from exhaustion. Nora Chen pressed her forehead against the cool glass of her apartment window, watching the city pulse with Friday night energy 20 floors below. At 32, she had built everything she was supposed to want: a corner office at a prestigious marketing firm, a stylish apartment in the heart of downtown, respect from colleagues who sought her strategic mind. Yet tonight, like so many nights before, she stood alone in the carefully curated space that somehow felt emptier with each passing month. Her phone rested on the marble kitchen counter, screen illuminated with a booking confirmation she had stared at for the past hour. The decision had not come impulsively. Nora was methodical by nature, weighing options with the same analytical precision she applied to client campaigns. This choice, however unconventional, stemmed from a simple recognition: she needed human connection without the weight of expectation, without the performance of dating, without the inevitable questions about why someone successful remained single. The arrival. The knock came at exactly 9 o'clock, punctual, professional, unremarkable. Nora smoothed her casual sweater and opened the door to find a man whose presence immediately contradicted her assumptions. James stood in the hallway wearing dark jeans and a simple navy jacket, his appearance deliberately understated. No flashy watch, no designer labels, nothing that screamed hired companion. His brown eyes met hers with calm directness, absent the practiced seduction she had braced herself for. "Good evening," he said, his voice warm without being overly familiar. "I'm here for the 9 o'clock appointment." Nora stepped aside, her heart beating with nervous anticipation rather than anxiety. As James entered, she noticed how he moved with quiet consideration, removing his jacket and folding it over the back of a chair without presumption. The gesture struck her as oddly respectful, as though he understood this was her space and he was merely a guest within it. "Would you like something to drink?" Nora asked, needing the ritual of hospitality to ground herself. "Water would be perfect, thank you." Establishing boundaries. They sat across from each other in her minimalist living room, the city lights providing ambient illumination through sheer curtains. Nora had rehearsed this conversation, determined to establish clear parameters before anything else could unfold. "I want to be transparent about what I'm looking for tonight," she began, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. "This isn't about physical intimacy, at least not primarily. I needed someone to talk to, someone who won't make assumptions about what I should want or who I should be." James set his water glass down carefully, giving her words their full weight before responding. "That's completely understood. Whatever you need tonight, we'll move at your pace. And if all you want is conversation, that's more than enough." The answer unsettled Nora in the best possible way. She had expected charm, perhaps gentle persuasion, the subtle manipulation of someone skilled at reading desire. Instead, James offered something more valuable: genuine attentiveness. "Can I ask why you do this work?" The question escaped before Nora could second-guess it. James considered for a moment, his expression thoughtful rather than defensive. "Because sometimes people need to be heard without judgment, and they need that space to exist outside their regular lives. There's value in providing that, even temporarily." The first honest exchange. As the evening progressed, Nora found herself sharing more than she had intended. She spoke about the exhaustion of maintaining professional composure, the way success had somehow calcified her social connections rather than expanded them. She described the peculiar loneliness of being surrounded by people who saw only her achievements, never her uncertainties. James listened without interrupting, without offering platitudes or solutions. When he did speak, his observations were perceptive but gentle, asking questions that opened space rather than closed it. He shared carefully selected details about his own experience, the weight of expectations, the isolation that came from being seen as a role rather than a person, without dominating the conversation. "You wrote something in your booking request," James said quietly. "You asked for kindness above all else." Nora felt her throat tighten slightly. "Yes. That felt like the most important thing." "Then I'm glad I came tonight," he replied, and something in his tone suggested he meant it beyond professional courtesy. As midnight approached, neither of them had moved toward the physical arrangement that the booking implied. Instead, they had created something unexpected, a pocket of genuine human connection in a transaction designed to simulate it. Nora realized with startling clarity that she felt more seen by this stranger than she had by anyone in months. What she could not have known was that the man sitting across from her had orchestrated this entire encounter as an experiment, that his name was not simply James but James Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Enterprises, one of the city's most powerful corporations. And that this night of authentic vulnerability would soon collide with a truth that would shatter the fragile trust they had built. The morning after sunlight filtered through Nora's bedroom curtains in soft golden streams, pulling her gently from sleep. For a moment, she luxuriated in the unusual sensation of contentment, the memory of last night's conversation wrapping around her like warmth. James had left before dawn as they had agreed, slipping out quietly after thanking her for an evening that had felt more meaningful than either had anticipated. She reached for her phone, half expecting a message, but found none. Somehow, the absence felt right rather than disappointing. They had made no promises, established no expectations beyond those few hours of honest exchange. Nora showered and dressed with unusual lightness, surprised by how the simple act of being truly heard had lifted something heavy from her shoulders. The day passed in its familiar rhythm: client meetings, strategic planning sessions, the endless scroll of emails demanding attention. Yet beneath the professional routine, Nora carried a quiet realization: connection was still possible, even in the most unconventional circumstances. She had proven to herself that vulnerability did not always lead to disappointment. An unexpected invitation. By late afternoon, Nora's assistant appeared at her office door with an apologetic expression. "I know you hate these events, but the senior partners are requesting attendance at the Whitmore Foundation Gala tonight. Apparently, several major clients will be there, and they want our team visible." Nora suppressed a groan. Corporate galas represented everything she found exhausting about her industry: performative networking, champagne-fueled small talk, hours of standing in heels while discussing market trends with people who would forget her name by morning. But refusing was not an option, not when partnership decisions loomed on the horizon. "What time?" she asked resignedly. 7 o'clock. Black tie. The Grand Meridian Hotel downtown. Nora nodded, already mentally preparing herself for the evening's ordeal. She returned home with barely enough time to change into an elegant black gown she kept for such occasions, applying makeup with practiced efficiency. By 6:45, she was stepping out of a rideshare vehicle into the glittering chaos of a high-society fundraiser, the Grand Ballroom. The Grand Meridian's ballroom was exactly as she expected: crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light across hundreds of guests dressed in their finest, waiters gliding between clusters of conversation with trays of champagne and canapes, a string quartet providing elegant background ambience. Nora accepted a glass of sparkling water and positioned herself near a column, scanning for familiar faces from her firm. The evening proceeded with predictable tedium. She engaged in polite exchanges with clients, nodded through discussions of quarterly projections, and counted the minutes until she could reasonably excuse herself. Then, around 8:30, the lights dimmed slightly and a voice boomed through the sound system. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention please." The crowd quieted, turning toward the stage where a distinguished older man in an immaculate tuxedo stood behind a podium. "Tonight, we are honored to celebrate the extraordinary philanthropic work of the Whitmore Foundation and to hear from the visionary leader who has transformed not only his company but our entire business community. Please join me in welcoming James Whitmore, Chief Executive Officer of Whitmore Enterprises." The world tilts. Applause erupted throughout the ballroom, enthusiastic and sustained. Nora clapped automatically, her attention focused on finding the exit route rather than the stage. Then she glanced up at the massive screens flanking the podium, and her entire world lurched sideways. The man ascending the stage in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, waving graciously to the crowd, was James. Not just similar, identical. The same brown eyes, the same careful way of moving, the same presence that had sat across from her in casual jeans just hours earlier. Her champagne flute slipped slightly in her grip. She steadied it with both hands, her mind racing to reconcile what she was seeing. This could not be the same person. Except it was. Every detail matched, the shape of his jaw, the precise cadence of his speech as he began addressing the crowd, even the small scar near his left eyebrow she had noticed during their conversation. "Thank you all for being here tonight," James Whitmore said, his voice amplified and confident. "The Whitmore Foundation exists because I believe those of us with resources have an obligation to create opportunity for others. But true philanthropy requires more than writing checks, it requires understanding the lived experiences of those we aim to serve." Nora's vision narrowed. Understanding lived experiences. The phrase landed like a physical blow. Had last night been research? An exercise in slumming? Her stomach twisted with a nauseating mixture of humiliation and rage. Recognition. On stage, James continued his speech about corporate responsibility and community investment, his delivery polished and professional. But then his eyes swept across the crowd, and they found her. The recognition was instantaneous and mutual. His speech faltered for just a fraction of a second, imperceptible to most, but devastatingly clear to Nora. She saw the moment he realized she understood. Saw the calculated composure slip into something that looked like genuine concern. Their eyes locked across the crowded ballroom, and in that suspended instant, everything beautiful about the previous night curdled into betrayal. Nora set her glass down on the nearest table with deliberate control. She would not make a scene. Would not give him or anyone else the satisfaction of witnessing her emotional collapse. Instead, she turned with dignified precision and walked toward the exit, her heels clicking against marble with rhythmic determination. Behind her, the applause continued. James Whitmore accepted accolades and admiration from a room full of people who had no idea he spent his evenings pretending to be someone else, collecting stories from women vulnerable enough to trust him. The terrace confrontation. Nora pushed through the ballroom doors and found herself on an expansive terrace overlooking the city. The night air was cool against her flushed skin, a welcome contrast to the suffocating atmosphere inside. She gripped the stone railing, forcing herself to breathe slowly, to think clearly despite the emotional storm threatening to overwhelm her. She heard footsteps behind her within minutes. Of course he would follow. Men like him always did, accustomed to controlling narratives, to explaining away inconvenient truths. Nora. His voice was quiet, stripped of the public confidence she had just witnessed. "Please, let me explain." She did not turn around. "Explain what, exactly?" "That you're a billionaire who plays dress-up to study how ordinary people behave? That I was part of some sociological experiment?" It was not like that. James moved to the railing several feet away, respecting the distance she clearly needed. "I never meant to hurt you." "But you did." She finally faced him, her expression controlled but her eyes blazing. "You let me be completely vulnerable with someone I thought understood what it meant to exist outside privilege and power. And all along, you were exactly what I was trying to escape." The truth emerges. James ran a hand through his hair, the polished CEO veneer cracking to reveal genuine distress. "You are right. I should have told you who I was. But if I had, would you have been honest with me? Would anyone?" "That was not your choice to make," Nora replied sharply. "You decided for me what I could handle, what I deserved to know. That is not respect, James, or whatever your real name is." "Oh wait, that part was actually true. How convenient. Everything I said to you was true," he insisted. "My childhood, my experiences with isolation, the reasons I do this work, all of it was real. Except the fundamental context that you are one of the wealthiest, most powerful men in this city," Nora countered. "That detail seems rather significant, do you not think?" Silence stretched between them, filled only by distant traffic and muted music from the ballroom. James looked at her with an expression that seemed genuinely pained, but Nora could no longer trust her ability to read him. I started this because I wanted to understand how people truly are when power dynamics are removed, James said quietly. When there is no advantage to gain from me, no reason to perform. And yes, that was selfish. But what happened last night transcended the experiment. You made me feel seen in a way I have not experienced in years. And you made me feel safe enough to be vulnerable, Nora replied, her voice breaking slightly despite her efforts. Do you understand what you have taken from me? It is not just trust in you, it is trust in my own judgment. The words landed with devastating accuracy. James stepped back as though physically struck, and for the first time, Nora saw him truly recognize the scope of what he had done. I am sorry, he said, and it sounded hollow even to his own ears. So am I, Nora whispered. Then she walked past him, back through the ballroom without looking at anyone, and out into the night where she could finally allow herself to fall apart in private. The aftermath. 3 days passed before Nora could think about that night without her chest tightening with humiliation. She had called in sick to work Monday, spending the day in her apartment oscillating between anger and self-recrimination. How had she been so naive? How had she not recognized the subtle markers of privilege, the expensive watch he claimed was borrowed, the casual references to international travel, the way he carried himself with unconscious authority? But beneath the anger lived something more painful, grief for what she had briefly believed was real. That conversation, that connection, that moment of being genuinely seen, it had mattered to her. And now she could never be certain which parts had been authentic and which had been performance. By Wednesday, she returned to work with her professional armor fully restored, deflecting concerned questions from colleagues with practiced efficiency. If anyone had seen her at the gala or connected her to James Whitmore, they had the grace not to mention it. James's reckoning. Meanwhile, across the city in a glass-walled office overlooking the financial district, James Whitmore was having his own crisis of conscience. The board meeting he was supposed to be leading had devolved into white noise as his mind replayed the look in Nora's eyes on that terrace. James? Your thoughts on the acquisition timeline? His CFO's voice cut through his distraction. Proceed as planned, he said automatically, then paused. Actually, postpone it. I need to review the labor practices at the target company more thoroughly. Surprised glances exchanged around the conference table. James Whitmore was known for decisive action, not hesitation. That afternoon, he did something unprecedented. He called his head of human resources and his general counsel into his office together. I need you to shut down a program, he said without preamble. All undercover social research initiatives, effective immediately. Sir, those programs have provided valuable insights into consumer behavior and they are unethical, James interrupted. They violate informed consent, and I will not continue them under any circumstance. His lawyers exchanged concerned looks. Is there a legal exposure we should be aware of? No, James said quietly. Just a moral one. The gesture. 2 weeks after the gala, Nora received an unexpected email. It came from the director of City Hope Initiative, a grassroots organization she had volunteered with years ago when she first moved to the city, before work consumed all her time and energy. The email explained that an anonymous donor had fully funded a program Nora had proposed during her volunteer days, a professional mentorship network specifically designed for isolated young professionals struggling with the transition from ambition to fulfillment. The program she had designed, pitched, and watched get rejected as too small-scale to warrant investment. At the bottom was a single line: this was always your idea. It deserved to exist without conditions. Nora stared at the screen for a long time. No signature, no explicit confirmation of the source, but she knew. The knowledge created a complicated tangle of emotions, gratitude mixed with frustration that he thought money could repair what he had broken. Yet as she read through the program details, she realized this was not about repair. It was about action. He had not asked for her forgiveness or her acknowledgement. He had simply recognized something valuable and given it space to exist. Public accountability. A month after the confrontation, a quiet announcement appeared in the business section of the city's major newspaper. Whitmore Enterprises had established a new ethics advisory board composed of external experts, and had published a comprehensive transparency report acknowledging past practices that failed to meet the standard of informed consent we should uphold. The report specifically mentioned the termination of all covert research programs and outlined new protocols requiring explicit consent for any initiatives involving human subjects. It did not name James personally, but industry insiders recognized his fingerprints on every policy change. Nora read the article twice during her lunch break, sitting alone in a park near her office. She thought about the easy path he could have taken, burying the incident, using lawyers and money to ensure her silence, moving forward as though nothing had happened. Instead, he had dismantled systems and admitted fault publicly, even when few people outside would understand the full context. The accidental meeting. Spring arrived with unexpected warmth, and Nora found herself walking through the botanical gardens on a Saturday afternoon, seeking the kind of peace that only living things could provide. She stopped near a fountain, watching children chase each other around the stone basin while their parents relaxed on nearby benches. Nora. She turned to find James standing a respectful distance away, dressed in jeans and a simple shirt that reminded her painfully of their first meeting. He held a cup of coffee in each hand, looking uncertain in a way she had never seen from him. "I am not following you," he said quickly. "I come here most Saturdays. I can leave if you would prefer." Nora studied him for a moment, noting the shadows under his eyes that suggested he had been sleeping as poorly as she had. "You can stay." He approached slowly, offering her one of the coffees. "I remembered you take it with cream, no sugar." She accepted it, wrapping both hands around the warm cup. They stood in silence for several minutes, watching the fountain's water catch sunlight in prismatic bursts. "I read about the ethics board," Nora said finally. "And I received the email about City Hope Initiative." "I did not expect acknowledgement," James replied. "I just wanted you to know that I heard what you said. About power and responsibility. Why are you really here, James?" The question was not hostile, just weary. He took a slow breath. "Because I am trying to figure out how to be the person you thought I was that night, instead of the person I revealed myself to be." Tentative honesty. They walked slowly through the gardens, maintaining careful distance, speaking in fragments rather than flowing conversation. James told her about the loneliness of leadership, the way success had progressively isolated him from authentic human connection. How he had convinced himself that the undercover work was noble when it was really just a sophisticated form of control. Nora shared her own journey through the past months, the anger, the shame, the gradual recognition that his deception had forced her to examine her own patterns of protecting herself through emotional distance. "I am not ready to forgive you," she said as they paused near a bed of early roses. "I do not know if I ever will be." "I understand," James replied. "Forgiveness is not something I can ask for. But I want you to know that meeting you changed how I see everything, my work, my wealth, my responsibility to be honest even when it is uncomfortable." "That matters," Nora admitted quietly. "But it does not undo what happened." "I know." He turned to face her fully. "If I could offer you anything, what would you want?" She considered the question seriously. "The truth. Just the truth, going forward, about who you are and what you want. No more disguises, no more tests, no more games." "You have my word," James said. "No more deception. Even if it means losing the opportunity to know you better." A different beginning. They did not exchange numbers that day. Did not make plans to meet again. But as Nora walked away from the gardens, she felt something shift in her chest, not forgiveness, not trust restored, but possibility. Over the following weeks, they crossed paths occasionally, always in public spaces, always briefly. A nod across a coffee shop. A brief exchange at a charity book sale. Small moments that carried no expectation but allowed gradual familiarity to rebuild on honest foundation. 2 months after the garden encounter, Nora attended a panel discussion on ethical business practices. James was one of the speakers. When the moderator asked about his biggest professional regret, he spoke carefully but clearly about the importance of transparency and the damage caused when power dynamics remain hidden. After the event, Nora approached him in the lobby. "That took courage," she said. "It took consequences," he corrected gently. "You gave me those." She studied him, this man who had hurt her, who had also changed because of it. "Would you like to get coffee sometime? Real coffee, where we both know exactly who we are?" Relief and something deeper flooded his expression. "I would like that very much." "No promises," Nora warned. "No expectations beyond conversation." "That is where we should have started," James agreed. As they walked out into the spring evening, both of them understood this was not a reconciliation or a romantic beginning. It was something more valuable, an honest attempt to see if connection could exist without pretense, if trust could be built through transparency rather than destroyed by its absence. The city hummed around them, indifferent and alive. And for the first time since that night in her apartment, Nora felt like she was making a choice with full knowledge of what it might cost and what it might offer. True connection, she had learned, does not begin with perfection or grand gestures. It begins with the courage to be seen. Seen completely, flaws and power and vulnerability all visible at once. And sometimes, it begins again after being broken, rebuilt with harder-won wisdom and deeper honesty. The end.